Sunday sauce. The pot's been going since noon. The house smells like your grandmother's, and you reach for the little jar of oregano and shake it over the top the way you've done 1,000 times. A green dust settles into the red. It smells like summer. It looks like health itself. And that green dust is the single most likely thing in your entire spice rack to be carrying lead. You didn't do anything wrong. You bought the leaf, not the additive. You reached for the plainest, most natural thing in the store. Dried herbs, no chemicals, no preservatives. And that instinct is exactly the one nobody thought to protect. We pulled the paperwork on spices sold across 10 stores you actually shop. Walmart, Costco, Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, Amazon, Dollar Tree, the regular grocery aisle and the fancy one. And when an independent lab put those jars through testing, about 1/3 of them came back with enough lead, arsenic, and cadmium to worry a pediatrician. Not the weird imported stuff in the back of an ethnic market. The green-capped, all-American, sitting in your cabinet right now stuff. And here's the part that's going to sit with you all week. The dirtiest single result in the whole test didn't come from the dollar store. It came from the store people trust the most. The one with the friendly crew and the Hawaiian shirts. The one that feels like it's on your side. Quick one before we start. Type the store where you buy your spices in the comments right now. Just the name. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly where it landed on this list. 4 terms are going to do all the work tonight. Bioaccumulation, the 1 part per million line, the organic loophole, and no federal floor. Learn those 4 and the spice aisle can never quietly hand you a heavy metal again, because the front of the jar is a promise. The dirt it grew in is the receipt. We judged all 10 the same way. Lab numbers, FDA records, recall notices. Paper only, no guessing. Counting down, worst at the very end. We start at number 8. First, the honest part, because this channel doesn't sell panic. Nothing on this list is going to drop you where you stand. Lead in food is not poison in the movie sense. It's slow, it's cumulative, and the people it matters for most are small children, because there is no blood lead level a pediatrician will call safe for a kid. So this isn't a video about a spice that will hurt you tonight. It's a video about a metal that adds up quietly over years in the one shelf of your kitchen you assumed was the pure one. The numbers you're about to hear come from a Consumer Reports laboratory investigation of 126 spice products, from FDA recall records, and from federal court and health department filings. Every claim tonight has a page behind it. One more thing before the countdown. For years, the story we all carried was simple. Fresh is risky, dried is safe. Processed is the danger, plain is the cure. Fake food happens overseas, not in a jar with an American flag on the label. Keep that story in your head. Watch what the lab does to it. Number 8, Dollar Tree. Let's start with the store everybody already blames. In early 2024, the FDA flagged ground cinnamon sold at Dollar Tree and Family Dollar, the Supreme Tradition brand, for lead levels between 2 and 3.5 parts per million. The agency told people to throw it out. So meet your first term right away, the 1 part per million line. There is no federal limit for lead in your cinnamon. But New York State drew a line back in 2016. 1 part per million. Cross it, and the state can pull the product. That Dollar Tree cinnamon didn't just cross the line, it tripled it. And yet, here's why the cheapest store on this list opens the countdown instead of ending it. It got caught. Somebody tested it, an agency named it, a recall happened, the jar came off the shelf. The dollar store gets watched precisely because nobody trusts it. Hold that thought, because it's the whole engine of this list. The stores you distrust get tested, and the stores you love get skipped. Being suspected is a kind of protection. Being trusted is the opposite. This is the shallow end. Feel the water. It gets colder fast. Number 7, Amazon. The everything store sells a leaf that always fails. Amazon's house spice brand is Happy Belly, and when the lab tested its dried thyme, it came back on the concerning side. But the real headline isn't Happy Belly. It's thyme itself. In that Consumer Reports test, every single brand of thyme and every single brand of oregano landed in the worry column. Not most, all of them. Which brings us to your second term, and it explains almost this entire video. Bioaccumulation. A plant is a straw. It pulls water and minerals up out of the soil. And if that soil carries lead, from old leaded gasoline, from mining, from a century of industry settling into the ground, the plant pulls that up too. The parts that do it hardest are the leaves and the roots. A leaf spice like thyme or oregano is a dried, concentrated sheet of everything the plant drank. You're not seasoning with a plant. You're seasoning with a filter. And nobody changed it. That's why Amazon's thyme fails, and it's why the brand almost doesn't matter here. The lead didn't come from a factory. It came from the ground the herb grew in. The next stores on this list didn't grow cleaner leaves. They just sold you a nicer jar to put them in. Number 6. Walmart. One brand, a little bit wrong in 4 different jars. Walmart's great value line didn't post one giant scary number. It did something quieter. Its chili powder, its paprika, its cumin, its ground ginger all showed up with some level of concern. No single villain. Just a low hum of lead spread across the spices a family actually reaches for every week. And that's the Walmart problem in one sentence. Scale. Great value isn't a boutique that sells a few thousand jars. It's the default seasoning for a huge share of American kitchens. A some concern number on a spice almost nobody buys is a footnote. The same number on the spice that ends up in millions of weeknight dinners is a public health pattern wearing a yellow price tag. The dose that matters is never one shake. It's the same shake, the same jar, the same brand, 5 nights a week, for years. Number 5. Costco. The club-size jar has a club-size problem. Costco's Kirkland Signature Turmeric came back at a moderate level of concern in the lab, and turmeric is a root, which means it sits on the wrong side of the bioaccumulation rule to begin with. But Costco adds a twist the others don't: volume. You don't buy a little jar at Costco. You buy the tub. The 1.5 pounds of golden powder that lives in your cabinet for 2 years and goes into every curry, every rice, every red turmeric is healthy smoothie. So take a spice that naturally concentrates metal from the soil, and then buy it in the largest quantity sold in America, and then use it more often because a wellness blog told you it was medicine. Every one of those decisions felt responsible. Stacked together, they're just more of the same metal, more often, for longer. Now pause the countdown for 1 second, because the list changes here. From number 5 up, not one of these stores got recalled. Not one got a warning letter. And it is not because their spices were cleaner. It's because nobody made them look. The dollar store got tested because it's the dollar store. Everyone above this line got the benefit of the doubt. And the benefit of the doubt is the most expensive thing in this aisle. Number 4. The organic aisle. The word organic did nothing the lab could measure. One of the most trusted names in the natural foods section is simply organic. Green label, Ustaseal, the whole promise of clean. Its oregano landed in the concerning column right alongside everyone else's. And that isn't a scandal about one brand. It's the 3rd term you need tonight: the organic loophole. Here's what organic certification actually governs: synthetic pesticides, synthetic fertilizers, what gets sprayed on the crop and what gets added in processing. Here's what it says about lead in the soil the crop grew in: nothing. Not one word. Lead is a metal that's been in the ground for decades. It's because nobody made them look. An organic oregano and a conventional oregano grown in the same contaminated field pull up the same lead. You paid extra for a sticker that was answering a different question than the one you were asking. That's the quiet cruelty of this shelf. The label you reached for to be safer was the label least equipped to help. Number 3. The premium shelf. Premium bought you a nicer jar, not cleaner dirt. The glass bottle brands, Spice Islands, Penzies, the names that cost 2 and 3 times the store brand and feel like a small luxury. Their oregano and their thyme sat in the same worry column as everything below them. The lab doesn't taste the freshness. It doesn't grade the label design. It measures the metal, and the metal doesn't know what you paid. This is where the health halo really starts to cost money. You spent more specifically to buy yourself out of the cheap spice problem. And the extra dollars bought you sourcing stories, prettier glass, and the exact same relationship with the soil. Premium is a promise about quality. It was never a promise about lead, because no one on this shelf is required to make that promise at all. Which brings us to the 2 names at the top, the 2 everybody in the comments is quietly hoping didn't make the list. Number 2. McCormick, the most trusted red cap in America. McCormick is the brand your mother used and her mother used. The one that isn't a store brand, that's in every store, that feels less like a company and more like a fact of the kitchen. And in the testing, its oregano and thyme carried the same concern as the rest, with its paprika and turmeric landing at a moderate level on top of that. Now the 4th term, the one that holds this whole video together: no federal floor. There is no FDA limit for how much lead is allowed in most of these spices. None. The agency has guidance for some baby foods and has finally started moving on cinnamon after children got hurt. And we'll get to that. But for the oregano, the thyme, the paprika, and the biggest spice brand in the country, there is no legal number a product has to stay under. So McCormick isn't breaking a rule. That's the point. You can't break a limit that was never written. The most trusted brand in the aisle is operating in the one aisle with no speed limit and driving exactly as fast as that allows. That's not a McCormick conspiracy. It's a system that decided this metal, in this food, wasn't worth a line on the books. A McCormick simply lives inside that decision, like everyone else. It just does it with the most trusted label in America printed on the front. Number 1. Trader Joe's. The store that swears it's on your side scored the worst of anyone on this list. In that Consumer Reports investigation, exactly one store brand earned the lab's highest tier of concern. Not some, not moderate, but high concern. It wasn't the dollar store. It wasn't the giant. It was Trader Joe's organic cumin. Sit with how many trust signals just failed at once. Trader Joe's, the cult store, the one with a fan base, the one people drive across town for because it feels honest. Organic. The word we just watched mean nothing about metal. And cumin, a seed, which should have been on the safer side of the plant rule entirely. Every reassurance you'd use to pick that jar off the shelf. The beloved store, the green word, the humble spice. And it still posted the single dirtiest store brand result in the test. And nothing happened to it. No recall, no warning letter. Because remember the fourth term. There's no legal line to cross. The cinnamon at the dollar store got pulled because New York drew a line and somebody was watching a store nobody trusts. The worst result in the whole test sat safely on the shelf of the store everybody trusts, wearing the word organic, and no rule in the country said a thing. That's the betrayal at the top of this list, and it's why the order runs the way it does. We didn't count up from cheapest to most expensive. We counted up from least trusted to most trusted, and the lead got worse the whole way. The front of the jar is a promise. The dirt it grew in is the receipt. And nowhere is the gap between the two wider than at the store that promised the most. So pause the countdown. None of this is an accident, and it's bigger than any one brand. Go back 100 years. We put lead in gasoline, in paint, in pipes, in the industrial exhaust that rained down onto farmland for generations. That lead is still in the soil, and it will be for centuries. Spices are the perfect trap for it. They're plants grown in that soil, then dried down until whatever they absorbed is concentrated 10 and 20 times over, then ground into a powder where you can't see a thing. And in some places, the soil isn't even the worst of it. This is where it stops being an accident of geology and becomes a decision. That Stanford investigation into turmeric found that in parts of the world, processors were deliberately mixing an industrial pigment, lead chromate, into the turmeric. Why? Because it made the powder a brighter, more valuable yellow, and because it added weight. Spices are sold by the gram. Lead is heavier than turmeric and cheaper than turmeric. So the math wrote itself. They weren't hiding the lead. They were selling it by the gram at the price of the spice. Samples in that work ran up to 500 times the local legal limit for lead. And if you want to know why the no federal floor thing actually matters, why a missing number on a government page is worth 20 minutes of your evening, here's the receipt. In late 2023, lead-tainted cinnamon turned up in apple puree pouches fed to toddlers. Not a niche product. Little squeeze pouches, the kind you keep in the diaper bag. The FDA found lead in that cinnamon at levels around 200 times the action level it had proposed for baby food. By the time it was over, more than 560 children across 44 states had elevated blood lead. Most of them were under 2 years old. The middle child in that group tested at about twice the level that triggers concern, and the worst of them ran more than 10 times past it. These weren't kids who ate something strange. They ate applesauce. That is what no federal floor looks like when it finally touches a body. For years, lead in cinnamon was a footnote nobody was required to test for. Then it was in a pouch, in a child, in 44 states. The line New York drew in 2016 wasn't bureaucracy. It was the only adult in the room. And before you decide this is just how spices have to be, it isn't. That same Stanford team didn't only find the lead chromate in turmeric. They went to the mills, worked with the local government, put real penalties on it, and handed out fast lead detection tools. Within a couple of years, the share of turmeric samples with detectable lead in that region dropped from nearly half to zero, and children's blood lead levels fell with it. The contamination wasn't a law of nature. It was a choice nobody had bothered to reverse, until someone drew a line and enforced it. Now let me take away one thing you might have been about to try, because a bad test is worse than no test. You've seen the viral turmeric trick. Drop a spoonful in a glass of water, and if it bleeds a bright yellow-orange, people online will tell you it's adulterated. Here's the problem. That test can catch one specific dye, a thing called methanol yellow. It does not reliably catch lead chromate, which is the metal we actually care about. A turmeric can pass your glass of water and still be carrying lead. Don't mistake a clear glass for a clean spice. The water test answers a question you weren't asking and lets the real one walk. So what actually passed? Because plenty did, and the winners tell you exactly what to do. Here's the twist. The spices that came back clean weren't a better brand. They were a better shape. Across the testing, black pepper came back clean in every brand tested. So did garlic powder, coriander, saffron, sesame, white pepper, and most cumin. Look at that list and the pattern jumps out. They're seeds, they're barks. They're the peppercorns and the dried seeds and the hard little pods, the parts of the plant that don't concentrate metal the way a leaf or a root does. Call it the seed and bark rule. The safest spice on the shelf isn't a name, it's a shape. And it's worth saying out loud how much of your rack is fine, because a video like this can leave you scared of your own kitchen, and that's not the point. In that testing, whole categories of spice came back clean across every brand, the seeds and peppercorns that carry most of your cooking. The problem isn't the spice cabinet. It's about 4 shelves in it, the leaves and the roots. Fix those 4, and you've fixed almost the entire risk without giving up a single dinner. So the winner of this whole test is not a brand you can buy. It is a habit. Lean your everyday cooking on the seeds and the peppercorns. Black pepper, coriander, cumin seed, mustard, the workhorses that season most of your food anyway. Treat the leaf spices and the root spices, oregano, thyme, basil, ginger, turmeric, as the ones to buy in smaller amounts. Rotate between brands, and never lean on a single jar of, day after day, on a small child's plate. Notice that is the same rule that failed everyone above. The losers failed because leaves and roots drink the soil. The winners passed because seeds do not. One rule, read from both ends. 3 things you can do tonight before you buy another jar. First, sort your rack by the plant. Leaves and roots on one side. Use less, rotate more. Seeds and peppercorns on the other. Those are your safe daily drivers. It is not a verdict on any single jar. It is better odds on every meal. Second, go to your spice brand's website and search for the words tested for lead or heavy metals or certificate of analysis. A few good brands now publish that testing. Most publish nothing at all. That silence is not neutral. In an aisle with no required testing at all, a company that is not bragging about it is a company that probably is not doing it. Third, for turmeric specifically, the one spice on this list somebody has a financial reason to poison. Buy whole root and grind it, or buy only a brand that publishes lead testing, and be suspicious of loose powder that is a suspiciously electric orange. And please do not lean on the water glass. Color is the thing being faked. Color cannot be the thing that clears it. 4 myths to leave in the old jar. 1. Organic means clean. You watched it mean nothing tonight. It governs the spray, not the soil. 2. It is such a tiny amount. Dose is frequency times quantity, and a leaf spice on a toddler's food every single day is exactly the frequency that adds up. Remember, no amount of blood lead is considered safe for a child. 3. This is an overseas problem. The failing list was wall-to-wall household American names in the 10 stores on your own street. 4. The brighter the color, the purer the spice. For turmeric, brighter can be the tell that lead chromate is in there. Color is marketing. It has never once been a purity test. And while we're being honest about money, run the year. The premium oregano runs you 3-4 times the store brand. Call it a few extra dollars a jar, a couple dozen jars a year across a spice rack. That's real money, spent for a specific feeling, that you bought your family out of the cheap spice risk. But the lab already told you the metal doesn't read the price tag. So that premium spend didn't buy less lead. It bought a nicer glass bottle and a quieter conscience. You paid a halo tax. Extra money for a promise nobody on that shelf is actually required to keep. The one purchase that would have lowered your risk, whole seeds, ground fresh, is usually the cheapest thing in the aisle. Here's the whole video in 5 seconds, so screenshot this. Leaves and roots drink the most lead. Buy them small, rotate, and test shop. Seeds and peppercorns are your safe daily spices. Organic is a sticker about chemicals, not metal. And nobody's required to test any of it, so favor the brands that choose to. So here's what you actually walked away with tonight. Bioaccumulation. Why the plainest, greenest spices carry the most. The 1 part per million line. The only real limit in the country. And it's just 1 state's. The organic loophole. The word that answers the wrong question. And no federal floor. The missing number that ended up in 560 children. You can read the whole confession off the shelf now. The front of the jar is a promise. The dirt it grew in is the receipt. And now you can read both. So tell me, did your store make the list? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and I'll tell you where it landed. And send this to the person in your life who buys the giant tub of turmeric because a podcast told them it was medicine. They're the one who needs the plant rule most.